Hey, welcome everybody to another edition of Coffee with Coach. This is an extra special edition because we have in the studio today not only coaching royalty, this is NFL royalty right here. And this gentleman who's in front of you, Wade Phillips, is a guy who's coached over 40 years in the National Football League. He is the son of a legendary head coach in the National Football League, a guy we're going to talk about in a little bit, and one of the greatest defensive coaches to ever strap a whistle on. And so, Wade, welcome. Thank you very much for coming to the show.
I appreciate that, Jeff. That's maybe too kind, but
No, I think it's maybe that may be short selling it a little bit. All right, now here's the thing that people, I think people really don't maybe know now as much as they understood. Guys my age understood. Your dad, Bum, was maybe as colorful a character has ever patrolled the sidelines in an NFL stadium. And
oh yeah, and I've always said, hey, there's never going to be another guy on the sideline with a cowboy hat and cowboy boots during coaching an NFL game. Of course, Nike wouldn't let him do it anyway nowadays. So
yeah,
you had a lot more personality, or you could show your personality in those days. I think, with Tom Landry wearing his hat and guys wearing suits on the sidelines. It's changed.
Yep. Dick Nolan, I remember he used to wear a suit on the sideline. And
Right.
Coach, now take me back, right? When you're a young kid, right, and your dad's bouncing around in the coaching business, because Bum had a number of stops on the way. Now, where did he start? At what level did he start his career?
Yeah, he started coaching in high school in Southeast Texas, and in fact, his first year there were only 3 coaches then, and he was like the B team coach, and there were 3 guys. And the next year, the head coach quit or left, and somebody left. The school board voted him as the head coach, and he got a note on his door coming home one night and said, "Congratulations, you're the head coach." And he thought it was a joke, because he'd only been 1 year out and he'd been coaching the B team, but he took over, and I think he won 50-some straight games after that, so they knew he could coach.
No press conference, no nothing, no. They just
No.
you get a note on your car. You're the head coach tomorrow. Where was that at? Where was that out in East Texas?
That was in Nederland, Texas.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
Beaumont, Port Arthur area.
All right. Now he goes on, gets in the NFL, and then goes back to college to coach at SMU for Hayden Fry, I believe. And then Hayden left and went to Iowa. And because I coached at SMU, Wade, I heard this story told by some guys that were on that team that, he was so well loved by the players in one season that when Hayden left, they basically marched on the president's house and said, "You got to hire Bum."
And yeah, there was I guess it's not really great when that happens because they usually don't give you the job. But yeah, there was a big people texted. Well, it wasn't texting then, but people wrote letters, and the team voted to try to get him the head job, but it didn't work out. But it worked out later on.
So when you were at playing quarterback at Houston when he was the head coach of the Oilers?
No, I was coaching. I coached with him then. So
okay, all right.
Yeah, he coached me in high school, my junior and senior year in high school. So he was a high school coach at 45 years old, I guess, something like that, and said he was going to stay there and be the AD and head coach the rest of his career. And he went to University of Houston. Of course, then I went to University of Houston, and so and then he went pretty quickly to the pros, and then back to SMU, and then back to the pros, and then the head coach. So pretty quickly though.
Wade, I've heard you say this about your dad. Number one, obviously you guys were very, very close and you respected him and loved him very much. And I heard you say that one of the things you learned from him in coaching was how to work with people, how it was about people.
Oh yeah. Well, life is about people, and coaching is, part of life. And uh, so, yeah, and it's working with people. It's not, he was a head coach for a long time, but it's not the people working for you. It's the people working with you. So I learned that, and I learned, the other thing I learned from him was coaching wasn't, he called it coaching wasn't bitching. Coaching isn't griping, it's not griping about everything after it already happens, that so-and-so didn't do this or didn't do that. It's teaching them to do it better beforehand so you don't have to gripe about it.
Tell me about because that relationship thing about, it's about human beings. You're coaching human beings. They got
Sure.
families, they got lives, they got all that. I've heard that the barbecues on walkthrough day with the Oilers were legendary.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, Saturday practice, you could, and they did. The players would bring their kids, the dogs. Dogs would be running all over the place, and we're trying to, But it's Saturday practice. If the day before game is, a walk through anyway. But he would have barbecue there. Willie Nelson showed up one time. I mean, so it was Muhammad Ali showed up one day.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, came by practice. So I mean, it was kind of an open, real loose, and that's what he wanted to be the day before game anyway. Really.
Right. You know what? It's amazing. Having been coached in Texas and at SMU, and then I'm being in Houston right now. It's incredible how much of an impact your father made on the coaching community in this state. I mean, he is still legendary.
Oh yeah, yeah, and the numbers, the defensive numbering system, the two technique, three technique. He invented all that coaching in high school, and it's still prevalent everywhere that I know of.
Now, okay, you're going to take me down another path.
Okay.
John Paul Young, right?
John Paul Young, yep.
Now, is he not the guy who made the templates where
Yes,
so the
yes,
coaches could draw X's and O's?
you bet. Yep.
Now, how did John Paul fit in all that? Because you guys put the clinic together in San Angelo.
Right. John Paul played for my dad, and coach was a graduate assistant with him. And then, yeah, John Paul coached at SMU too later on, but he's kind of a legendary guy anyway. Yeah, he made those circle drawers, we call them, but where you could draw the plays and draw offenses and defenses, and I think you still have those, but we've gone more high tech nowadays. But John Paul played for my dad and then coached, and then when my dad went to the Oilers, he hired John Paul and myself his second year there, and we both came that year, and then went with him at New Orleans.
As a kid, did you sit around a dinner table and diagram plays and talk about football and talk about structure and all that?
No, because we didn't eat dinner. He didn't eat dinner at home, so I'd go down to the field house and watch him do that.
Okay.
In those days and nowadays too. But I mean, coaches worked late, so to see my dad, I'd just go down to the field, and it was just across the street, so I just walk over there as a kid and watch the coaches. And they had chalkboards then. And they're chalking and erasing, man, and so. And I saw how much fun it was, how much fun they had, how much they enjoyed what they were doing. So, later on when I wanted to decide what I wanted to do, you go back to what you've seen and something that seems people enjoy, so.
When was it that you decided that you were going to be a coach, that was going to be your life's work?
Really my senior year at University of Houston, and I've been a 3-year starter at linebacker there, and I went to training camp. My dad was with the Chargers in San Diego, and I went out to the training camp before my senior year to to visit family, and so I watched the Chargers practice, and I saw the linebackers that were playing in the NFL, and I realized pretty soon that I wasn't going to be, what was I going to do after I finished my senior year? So I wasn't going to be playing football in the NFL. I knew that. I could realize that. So that's why I started thinking about it, so what I want to do. And, that's what I knew something about. So, and I
Well,
knew people, and it just started there. It's a family deal. And my son coaches now too. So,
I know you've had Wes on your staff, right?
yeah. Well, yeah, Wes is for the Rams right now. So,
Yeah. Okay. Now,
passing game coordinator.
you have a winning percentage as a head coach in the National Football League of
Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
546.
Don't tell
Five
anybody.
546, Wade.
Nobody knows
540.
that.
Huh?
Nobody knows that.
I do. I know it, and that's pretty damn impressive. When you
Yeah,
think about it, you've been at
I was a
Denver, you've been at
decent-
Buffalo, and you've been, and you've been with the Cowboys, and then interim with the Oilers, Falcons, and the Texans.
Right.
546. Now, how many guys can hang that number?
Well, I'm proud of having a winning record like that, but most people say, and I said I wasn't a great head coach, but I was a pretty good defensive coordinator. So that's really my niche.
What when you talk about great players, and you've had a ton of them, like players of the year, Reggie White, Bryce Pop, Bruce Smith, J.J. Watt, Aaron Donald, right? I mean, you've been Andre. I talked to Andre Ware one time, and he absolutely loves you. I mean, he can't say enough good things about you. So
Yeah,
you've had
DeMarcus Ware.
DeMarcus Ware. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Andre Ware.
Andre was throwing the court. It was a quarterback. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
But
that's
DeMarcus,
all right.
DeMarcus said that what you were able to do with him, at kind of a hybrid position, because he was, I don't know, he couldn't call him an outside linebacker, but he was, I mean, boy, oh boy. And he had those great years in Dallas. Then you got him right at the end of his career and brought him. He was kind of the missing link maybe in that Bronco defense.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was a great player and a Hall of Fame player, really. So I'm sure
when you look at all of those guys, and they're predominantly defensive linemen, right? Pass rushers and defensive linemen. Yeah. What are the common traits that all of those guys had, Wade?
Besides big heart, besides just wanting to be better, even though they were better than everybody, they wanted to be better, and they tried to be better all the time. There's something. It's a competitive nature, whatever it is. Those guys had it, they, and I had Robert Brazil who went in the Hall of Fame too. I mean, so I've had some great ones, and Von Miller who's going to go in the Hall of Fame too. So, but it's they want to be great, and they do everything they can to be great. They utilize their talent, and you've been around. I mean, we've seen a lot of guys with talent that didn't do well, but those guys had great talent, but they maxed it. They maxed it out, really.
So when you're coordinator and you're looking at guys for the draft, right? You got your parameters, height, weight, speed, and all of that. How do you weigh it? What is the number one thing you want out of a defensive lineman when you're looking at him in the draft?
Well, I look for pass rush ability, natural pass rush ability, and that's really naturally turning your hips, naturally. I looked at film way back. My dad gave me a film when I was coaching in college, and he had a film of all the great pass rushers of that time. And what I tried to do is look at that and see what they did naturally, and what made them successful. Deacon Jones, Bob Lilly, way back, and they could move their hips and shoulders easily, And I thought if you could utilize that, because you change his angles on the rush. So, right. And so I started teaching that stuff, and or guys that could get better at it, and that's. But the guys that could do it naturally, that's the ones you want, obviously.
Because it's interesting when you look at that list of players, right? And you've got a shorter guy in an Aaron Donald who's extremely explosive, and and Reggie White was special. I mean, I don't know if I ever seen a guy throw people around like he could throw people around.
Yeah.
Where does explosiveness come into that? Strength and explosiveness come into that factor?
Well, yeah, I mean, the natural ability to be able to run fast and generate power. That's the thing about Reggie and all of those guys. But Reggie was a big guy that could really run fast, and so he generated a lot of power to start with, and then of course Aaron Donald's the same way. He had that great core strength and that speed that made him. But yeah, most all those guys, we took them about Hall of Fame guys. Now you're not talking about just regular guys.
Other guy, just guys on the street, yeah.
Yeah, those guys, they had it, but they utilized it. They sure did.
Okay, for you as a coordinator, right? Building a defense. If you were going to come in and put one together, I've heard Al Davis say, build it from the outside in, get me corners that can cover, and I'll stick enough guys in the box that you can't run it. I've heard other guys say, be good down the middle. Where do you start?
Well, in the NFL, you start with pass rush, in my opinion. It's really the guys up front. Of course, I coached a 3-4 most of the time, so I really like the guys on the edge. And then of course we had Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware. Bryce Pop, the guy you mentioned, and Cornelius Bennett was on that team too. So besides Bruce Smith, so. But yeah, it's you got to put pressure on the passer, and you can look at your coverages all you want to, but it's really the pressure. Your coverage is better with the pressure. So I look for pass rushes.
Okay, now I've heard you say this also. My job is to teach, right?
Right.
And what makes a great teacher in your mind?
Results. I think it's we always said, and you can't do it really, but we always said we're not going to make any mental mistakes. That's our standard. Our standard is no mental mistakes, and so if they don't make many mental mistakes, then they can utilize whatever ability they have, and then so I think that's the key thing in teaching is they know what to do. It sounds simple, but offenses are so complicated. It forces defenses to be complicated. So it's really knowing what to do and doing it full speed and no hesitation. And that's the teaching part. When you taught a guy, what to do, and he doesn't have any hesitation about what he's doing, well, then he's going to do better.
Were you surprised, Wade, with the COVID thing and no OTAs, no mini camps, no really no training camp per se, that we were able to play as good a football this past fall as they were able to with all virtual meetings and all of that crazy stuff?
In some ways, but when I went to Texas in 2011, they had a strike and we didn't have an off season. And so we were new going in, so it's the same kind of deal. We were new, and they were 31st in the league in defense the year before. Of course, that's why I was there. And we went to second the first year. So I mean, it's just putting it together. And
Coach, a lot of fans have asked questions, and I want to pass them on to you if you wouldn't mind answering them. This comes from Julio in Madrid, Spain. He says, what would you say were the main differences in the Bronco organization from the first stint in the late 80s to your return to Denver to lead the defense?
Well, I think Denver's a special place. As far as Denver reminds me of the Texas high schools, the ones that are really good every year. They expect their team to be good. And I think it helps just because that's that kind of town. They want their team to be good. Everybody wants their team to be good, but they put pressure on them to be good every year. So that was there both stints. Now, the first stint I went there, the first year we went to the Super Bowl, we didn't win it, but we went to the Super Bowl, and the next time we won the Super Bowl in the first year. So, and of course, Pat Bowlen changed in those years, which was sad to me, certainly, seeing him regress with his disease. So, in fact, the second time when I went there, he didn't recognize me. He didn't know who I was.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was really a shame. I mean,
he was a wonderful man.
Yeah, I was his head coach. I was there for 6 years, and I went back, and of course I knew he had Alzheimer's, and he came to the facility one day, and so I went up and I said, "Hey, Pat, Wade Phillips," and he just his eyes were glazed over, and he just said, reached his hand out and said, "Pat Bowlen." He did not know who I was, and that was, hopefully we can do something about that disease in some way. If anybody can help with that, I hope they do.
I'm with you. Claire DeBear, this lady's a gigantic Bears fan in the UK. She says, what one rule would you bring in or change in the National Football League?
Well, I'd change all the defensive holding, the tough one was that when they changed, and I was there when they changed, you couldn't hit them until they were down the field 5 yards. I mean, Mel Blount and those guys were wearing people out,
On those crossers, they would just light you up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they didn't let them get down the field either. Mel Blount was 6'2" and just bump and run, and they couldn't get off the line of scrimmage. And so, I don't know if there's any changes that, they're talking about onside kick and trying to clarify that. And of course, I understand injuries. So, safety, I think that's great as far as the game's concerned. I hate to see them just not be able to kick the ball off or have an onside kick,
Yeah.
Those are big plays in the game that, fans like, but again, we have to worry about player safety.
Wait, how is it the game changed in those 40 years, right? Is it still the same game, or is it different now?
Well, you mean besides not having leather helmets now? When I started,
you don't go that far back now. Come on.
But everything's changed. Society obviously changed and so forth. We went from two-back off, everybody playing two-back offense to, I call it wide open, but it's, all that's changed, certainly, the way we played. But I will say this, in high school and college and pro football, and this is a great thing about football, before the game, everybody's excited about the game in the locker room. You've been there. That feeling before the game, everybody wants to do well. Everybody wants to win. And that's a neat feeling, and especially if you do win after the locker room afterwards, it's a great, it's an accomplishment, and we all did it together as a team. So those things are still there no matter where you're coaching.
All right. Fred Flunk from Ireland says, 2007, I think Dallas finished second in the league in scoring. This guy's a big Cowboy fan. You got to know that. So it says, aside from Romo, Owens, and Witten, who was the most underappreciated player on offense?
Romo, who?
Romo. He said Romo, Owens, and Witten.
Oh, Owens. Okay, T.O. Yeah, I was going to say T.O. had a great year there too. Well, probably the offensive line was good too. That's a big part of that. Marion Barber was a really good player, and I'm not sure people knew that, but he was, he could carry the load and made a lot of big plays for us. So for somebody that people might know, that'd be the guy.
I'll tell you what, he was a good football player. He
played hard.
Played behind his pads so well. And speaking of guys that played behind their pads, tell me an Earl Campbell story.
All right. Uh, I got a lot of them, but when we got him as a rookie, uh, we didn't the preseason games. We didn't play him very much, and then one game we played him in, he had the wrong shoes on, and it was raining on turf, and he slipped down, and so the rumors started kind of going out that, hey, Earl Campbell's going to be a bust. He's not what everybody thinks he is. So we played the last preseason game against Dallas, against the Cowboys there. And in those days, you played the last preseason game, you played all your starters, which is opposite now, but you played your team. Well, they were coming off the Super Bowl win. This was the Too Tall Jones and that group. I mean, they had a great defense, and one of our coaches kind of got caught up in I don't know what, but I mean, he told me before the game, he said, Wade, Earl Campbell's fixing to get welcome to the NFL tonight, and 177 yards later, 4 touchdowns. After the game, I went up to the coach and I said, "Hey, NFL just got welcomed Earl Campbell."
Yeah,
He went 77 yards on the first play of the game, ran over Charlie Waters and Cliff Harris. Yeah. First play of the game, went 77.
The play that I remember, and it's immortalized on NFL films, was, I think it was Isaiah Robertson.
It was Isaiah.
He ran him over, and it were like shock waves went through Isaiah Robertson's body when Earl Campbell hit him. Did his work?
In fact, I talked to Isaiah later on several years ago, but he said, I was in the Pro Bowl like 3 or 4 times, and he said the only thing people remember about me is getting run over by Earl Campbell. Because I told him, I said, "Hey, you were a really good player," and he said, "I know it," but he said nobody knows that. He said all they know is I got run over by Earl Campbell.
Fans, he is the son of Bum, and if you can follow him on Twitter, on that same greatest Twitter handle in captivity, I believe. And tell me about your book. Tell the fans about your book and where they can get it, because it's a great read.
Yeah, it's you can get it anywhere. Amazon, just get with them and they'll get it for you. But I wanted to do it for my dad. You're not always remembered. And so I wanted to make sure that, and for coaches, being a coach's son, but what all I learned from him, like I said, about coaching, and that, I tried to convey in the book, and then the father-son relationship. So, but I really wanted my kids and my grandkids and people in the family to remember my dad, and they do.
Well, Coach, you've always been really easy and special about sharing information. And I talked to you about the first time I met you. We were riding a van back from the practice field at Philadelphia, Westchester State University, where the Eagles had training camp. And I remember, I just being a young guy and just being like starstruck. I was in the van with Wade Phillips. And then later on, you started now, was it you and John Paul? How did the San Angelo Clinic start?
Well, it was started because of my dad. When my dad was coaching in high school in Texas, he was really well known then. And they have coaching school every year in San Antonio, Houston, or Dallas. They have big coaching school, and thousands of coaches go to that every year, still do. And my dad had a room, he had a room and a chalkboard in his room, and coaches would come and they'd talk football, but it got bigger and bigger. You couldn't hardly get in there. Then later on, when my dad was coaching the Oilers, we had training camp in San Angelo. And so the group there, John Paul Young was coaching with us with the Oilers, and then Jim Hess, who coached San Angelo at that time, and the guys there, they wanted to have the clinic, but not have it during coaching school because everybody couldn't get in the room. So they decided to have it in San Angelo, and it's a great clinic. It's wonderful.
Coach,
I've been to it 40 years probably.
fans, you got to understand now, this is out in West Texas, and there isn't much around San Angelo, not other than oil derricks, right? I mean, you got to want to get to San Angelo to get to San Angelo. And I had an opportunity to speak at one of them, and you actually speak in a basketball arena. There's so many coaches that come to this. Wait, there must have been, I swear to God, 3,000 coaches in that in that clinic. It is a fantastic thing.
Yeah, the best part of the clinic is the afterwards they take you in the room and people can ask you questions, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So middle school coach can ask a pro football coach a question he wants to know about football, or a college coach or whoever, or an outstanding coach that they have as a speaker. But you can learn so much by just going and being there and asking the question in that room. And it's amazing.
It is
I always thought that was the best part of it.
It was a fabulous experience for me. Adam in the USA says, who is the best defensive player you've ever coached, and which offensive player was the hardest to game plan for?
Wow. Yeah, you named a lot of the great players that I've coached. It's hard to say one Hall of Famer is better than the other. When I started with the Oilers, Robert Brazil, Curly Culp, and Elvin Bethea, three of the guys on the defense, I thought I was a good coach because I was coaching those guys. And I found out later I wasn't that good a coach. They're in the Hall of Fame. So, but I will say this: Reggie White had the best season that I've ever been around. In that, at Philadelphia, there we had a strike year where we only played 12 games, and he set the record of 21 sacks in that 12-game season. 12 games, he had 21 sacks.
21 sacks in 12 games.
12 games, yeah. Yeah, Strahan broke the record, but the record he set was 1987 with 21 sacks in 12 games. So, it's kind of a Babe Ruth record. I don't know if anybody ever break that one.
I got to throw this name at you because I've heard guys that I know that were offensive linemen, and they talk about the great defensive linemen that they ever lined up against. And I've heard guys say this guy was the toughest to block of any guy that they in that era of players, and it was Jerome Brown. And they said he was just so strong and so quick and so powerful.
Yeah, he was. We had Clyde Simmons and Reggie White and Jerome Brown and some guy. The other guy was Mike Golick.
Mike Golick
was the other guy. I always kid him about that. But yeah, Jerome was a tremendous talent too. It's a shame, obviously, but he was hard to block. Yeah, it was really. When we had those four guys, we really had something.
Coach, there's one here from Phillips in the UK. Says, "Son of a bum is a legend." All right. What has been your favorite stop so far in your career, and which defense are you most proud of?
Well, I've been lucky to be with a lot of great defense. We started, like I said, with the Oilers, and we were really good on defense in those days too. Philadelphia, we had a great defense. Actually, we were number one in the league when I was with New Orleans, and Buffalo, and so. The one that won the Super Bowl had to be one of the best of all time. We led the league in 13 categories going into the playoffs. So it wasn't like all of a sudden we played great in the playoffs. You beat Roethlisberger and Tom Brady, and then Cam Newton's the MVP of the league and averaging 40 points a game in the playoffs and shut them down. So that group was really special. They got 7 sacks in the Super Bowl game.
Wait, as impressive as the Super Bowl was, to me, what you did to Brady in the run up to the Super Bowl was master. That was chess against checkers. The things you guys did to take away Gronkowski, and it was really, I thought, masterful.
Yeah, it was still the rush. We hit him 24 times in that game, and that wasn't the most that Tom Brady had been hit. It was the most any quarterback had been hit in the whole season. So we had, and we were playing at home, which is great. But 24 hits on any quarterback during the game, and he was still in the game. We had to stop a 2-point play at the end of the game. So, he was still great. That's no doubt about it.
Coach, we got a lot of coaches that listen to this, and I'm going to stump a little bit for you. Your coaching, your certification program about coaching defense. Talk about it and let our fans know how they can subscribe or how they can become certified in Wade Phillips defense.
Yeah, John Paul Young, the guy you talked about, and I put this together, and the reason we did it, and the reason I did it, really was, and I know you're the same way. I mean, going to college, they don't teach you to be a coach. They don't teach you how to coach. They don't teach you anything about coaching. If you played, maybe you learned something, or if you had a background like I did, you got a head start. But there's nothing in college that says, hey, this is the way, this is the how you play defense, and the numbering system, and the whole system, and coverages, and so forth. So I really put that together to help coaches, help guys that want to be coaches. It's for anybody, I guess, but and I've had some media people that wanted to learn football that have taken the course, but which they need to, a lot of them. But yeah, it's just called the numbers defense. We call it the numbers defense, and it's numbersdefense.com, and you can take the course, and it is a course, and you have to pass the test. You have to have a passing grade to pass. You can't just you can't just look at it and go through it. We give you a certificate, which I think is important, because again, you don't learn that anywhere, that I know of. So we put that together, and I think it's been good for people.
Well, Wade, if I was going to take it, I'd want to look after your paper. I'd want to look on your paper.
Yeah, well,
hey, Coach,
in football, that'd be good. The rest of my classes, that wasn't good.
Hey, I tell you what. Tell me about your daughter now. You got an artsy daughter. You got a football coaching son and an artsy daughter.
Yeah, Tracy's. She was a dancer. Did a lot of. Had to watch way too many MTV videos, in those days when those were, because she was in a lot of them. She's a very good dancer, but she can do all of it. So, but now she's more of a choreographer, and does a lot of stuff, and has done, a lot of award shows, and done a lot of choreography. So that's what she does now. And she's really good at that too.
Now, I've never seen you Cotton Eye Joe, but did she get that from you, or did she get that from your wife?
Well, she could do any of it. Yeah, she can do any of it. And she didn't get it from me. She got it from my wife, because I got my dancing from my dad, which he wasn't a great dancer. So he's a great football coach, but not a real good dancer.
Coach, I appreciate your time so much. Our fans loved it, and I loved it. And I tell you what, I can't wait. You know what I'm looking for next thing for you? You're gonna put that gold jacket on yourself, because I think it's.
I don't know that they do assistant coaches, but I had a great career, and I enjoyed it. So, but I enjoyed this. This is fun talking football. That's what that's what we love. So I appreciate everything.
If I find out where you are in Houston, I may go or knock on your door. We couldn't stop the run last night. I need to get. So, but again, Wade, thank you so much.